Hello, 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 everybody, and welcome to episode 17 on the 17th, which I seem to be very excited about. Probably because it's like this, it's like the eclipse and the whole moon thing going on today as well. So it's just like quite a poignant day, I think, spiritually wise for everybody that and those that might be listening that follow along with all of those cycles. It's like a big time, I think, for a lot of shedding and letting go and opening up and having space for all that is meant for us. So I'm feeling it quite a lot myself right now. So I just welcome you all, whoever's listening, to just kind of tap into that energy with us today while we have a conversation around community, as always. And the focus today is looking at the geography of communities and what that means, and I guess whether it is a positive or a negative, as to whether we are close knit and together geographically wise, or whether communities can work when they are spread about in the world, which is something I feel like we've both got evidence of, especially within this community here, Always Better Than Yesterday. So I personally don't see geography as a barrier to community. I really don't. And I think that first became apparent to me, especially within this community, when I first went over to New York and met up with our lovely friends over there. And it actually made me think a little bit more when we kind of were thinking around this question today, how actually that's probably been a big aspect of my life, for different milestones in my life. Like I had a stint over in France for 6 months, and that was going into a new and fresh and building a new community of people and surrounding myself with people there. I then came home and went off to university and obviously did the same thing there. And, with like my solo travel and stuff that I've been doing over the last sort of few years, I go. So I guess what I'm trying to say, I think community goes with you wherever you go. If it's a part of you and your values and everything align with the people where you physically are, then that your community is there. So I think it doesn't matter where you are in the world. It's in here, isn't it? Community. It's not it obviously is an external thing because we are living in an external world. But I think, like we always talk about, from the inside out, a community has to be you and be a part of you. So therefore, it is portable.
Good,
Please feel
done,
free to
wrapped up.
contribute.
Like, who's this? Yeah, like, wow, who's this I'm talking to?
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Yeah, you can have a go now. It's
Yeah, I agree with what you say. Obviously, you know that we've been running this community worldwide for 7 years, and
yeah.
absolutely the obvious answer is geography has no boundaries when it comes to
Mm,
creating a community. But then I also do think, you know, because you said the words positive or negative, and I wrote
mm,
down the words kind of enablers and barriers, really, because I
mm,
think, you know, I think let's just take geography being online, right?
mhm,
Great enabler, but the thing I can't do right now is I feel that there are certain people that I have journeyed with in community that I'm not really tethered with at the moment.
yeah.
So the thing that I have to then do to overcome those barriers is put in certain types of effort that if it was a physical space that I went to every single time every week, I wouldn't have to.
Mhm,
So
mm,
like, you know, people like Reese in Australia with different time zones, Christine and JD, when life gets busy on an online community, if we don't find frequent kind of town hall moments of like
mm,
staying tethered, I feel that those relationships they don't ever disappear, but they just aren't active You know what I mean? It's like we're not actively spending time together in each other's.
Yes.
We're not coming together as one. We're not being in community, even though our
Mm-hmm.
membership will never cease because that's a heart-based thing.
Mm-hmm.
There are some people I'd love to see, and that's where I feel that there's a in-person community where those things would do that. So I think, this conversation is about recognizing the different effort and intentionalities we have to put into either physical communities or online communities.
Yeah, so I guess I think that would then lead me to ask the question then as to like what you perhaps think what makes a community then thrive. What does keep a community tethered? Because like you say, these people who we love dearly, who are in all corners of the world, like you say, have not gone anywhere. They're still here. They're still a part of of this space. So yeah, so what do you feel, I guess to use your word you just use, enables them to still feel a part of all that we do?
Like that saying of like Avengers Assemble. It's like
Yeah.
that. It's like showing it's like throwing up the big blue love heart like a Batman signal and
Yeah.
calling people together, giving people a reason to come together. Not just
Mm,
like an accident, not just say, hey, we're here like live now, we hope you can join us. It's like here's the time, here's the date, here's the reason we're gonna come together as one. And
mm,
um I think that's a really powerful thing is to invite people to be purposeful and intentional to come together.
mm,
The other way I think we can do that is, I think the way that we're doing at the moment is like contribution. It's like
mm,
people having something to contribute, whether it would be a view, or an opinion, or a perspective on a particular topic. That's another great way of having people assemble.
mm,
Much like Jessica, she rejoined after a period of absence and
mm,
came back in and was like, "Hey, I'm back. Like, can someone give me some recommendations for some inspirational, kind of mind-blowing content?" And I love the
mm.
fact. So I was just like, "Okay, I'm gonna see what happens here. I'm just gonna
Yeah.
sit in the background and just see how
Yeah.
the community mobilizes." And Haley and Katerina and Jason
Yeah.
straight in with like, "Oh, these are great episodes. Go listen to this." And
Mm,
it was amazing to see actually community kind of mobilize in that little moment of opportunity.
mm. And I guess with that, then what I'm sort of seeing, which I think is another point we were considering chatting about, is this kind of like hierarchical need in a community. Yes, I believe that there requires like a degree of order and structure and someone as like the lead. But what is beautiful, like you've just described, is that nobody feels that their contribution isn't valid in that way. And I think that's what that was a symbol of for me, is that they felt that they could come forward and what they had to contribute would be as valid as anybody within that. I don't want to say higher structure. That's not really what I'm trying to say. But do you know what I mean in terms of leadership? Maybe that they felt that what they had to say and what they had to contribute was of a value to this person and to the community. Um,
Yeah, because otherwise I'm not building a community, I'm building a followership.
yeah, yeah.
So the only relevance of hierarchy needed in a community is who's making the ultimate decisions.
Mm,
Like where are we going, where are we headed, and who's making these decisions? Like
mm,
ultimately, who does the responsibility? Who does the buck stop with? What are the things that I
mm,
cannot delegate?
mm,
Around the particular. Let's just say the community has faced with a challenge of it needs to change a platform, or we're no longer able to
mm,
do Facebook, or what.
mm,
Someone has to make that decision as, all right, where do we go? Right. That's the thing, right? And anyone out there looking to build a community, this is the paradox of me versus we, right? You've got the very beginning stages where community is absolutely about you. Why? Because this takes time, energy, devotion. This is like for us 7 years. This is stuff where like it'd be easy to get like tired and go, "Oh, sod this." You have to find the thing in your heart that you're so devoted and committed to that you do it like with absolute love and needing nothing in return. And And then in doing so, you create something pure and authentic, which should absolutely help someone in the world, usually who
Mm,
you once were and what you once needed. But there are
mm.
people that represent that. The minute someone then says, I want to join that, it has nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
It is absolutely about being a servant of that soul. And that's the paradox, I think, of me and we.
Mm.
We have to know who I am, who we are so so clearly, so that we can create the most authentic.
Aligned, isn't it? Whether it's in
Right.
alignment with everyone. Mm. And I guess then when it's not in alignment is when any kind of disruption or um,
Yeah.
occurs, really, isn't it?
Well, let's look at
So,
the word alignment. What am I not in alignment with? I'm not in alignment with
mm,
who I truly am, or maybe my
mm,
values. Maybe I'm not using my strengths. Maybe I'm doing something that's, like Jason would say with the working genius, is not my zone of genius.
yeah, exactly.
Maybe
Yeah.
it's taking more energy than it gives. Maybe I'm compromising who I truly am. That stuff's not sustainable. Like,
Mm,
I don't think that brings the best out of us or any situation if we are living in misalignment.
mm.
It's like tuning into a radio that's just not quite coming through clearly. Like,
Well, yeah, like frequency is massive, isn't it? And like I can fully like hand on heart say with my experience last week in Ibiza that it's like you're on another planet. Like it's hard to explain, like, but everyone that was there that I encountered on that island had managed to tune into that frequency 100%. You could feel it in like in the conversation, you could feel it in the pace of time, you could feel it even in like someone's like embrace, you could feel it, I don't know, in the calmness of the waves on the beach. There was just something that this island was like, right, this is so take the island as an entity. The island was like, right, this is my frequency. If you're not getting on board with my frequency, then you don't fit here, you know. And I guess there will be people that will go there and won't have the best time, and but then obviously it's just because their frequency is not in alignment with that island, and they'll go find their frequency somewhere else. But
yeah, one of the things that you and I went and saw Bruce Lipton, right?
mm,
One of the things that I really take from Bruce's story is the moment he's like, oh, he was edging into kind of new age Bruce, and then he was just like, you know what? I'm just gonna be me. I'm
mm,
just gonna be Bruce. And he says, with that, it was like this, like he felt like the presence of the divine, right?
mm,
Um, Authenticity is a frequency.
mm,
It's the one that we are putting into the world. So what you're talking about is feeling the authenticity and the expression of an island, a place, right?
mm,
Well, we both receive and emit a signal from the heart, right? I'm interviewing Roland McCarthy from the Heart Math Institute in a couple of hours.
mm.
And I'll be talking to him about this idea that the heart is receiving from our field, but it's also putting out into the field. And I
Yeah,
think,
I had a chap who I had an encounter, a very positive encounter with, and I asked, we exchanged very few words, and then I said, "Oh, please, may I sit down with you?" And he said, "Yeah." He said, "You can." He said, because you're not the typical Ibethan visitor. He says, "I can feel." So
you're
what
not
you're
Kevin
saying,
and Perry.
no, yeah. So like what you're saying about what you're omitting as well as what you're receiving. He said, "I can feel." Your energy and that we are going to have an exchange here, so yeah, sit down. So yeah, I get that entirely.
Sometimes we're too busy, right? Sometimes we're too busy. Maybe this podcast is an example of people trying to cram in some intellectual information, right?
Mm,
And something, without being too woo about it, something happens when we do slow down and really just allow the resonance to come through.
mm,
Because I heard this phrase that said, words are the least purveyor of truth. which means the more I start talking about stuff, the less I'm actually getting to the truth of the matter.
mm,
Like I have to be a real master of the craft of, of words to really get to the truth of it. But
mm.
when you sit and when you feel like when I'm sat there and like I've been trying to do some Wim Hof again some more this week,
Right.
and at the end of it, just like sat there with my dogs, just like looking at me, and we ain't got to say anything. And I can
Mm,
just see in their eyes that like bowing their heads to like little nose. I'm like, wow, we're like talking like this is love expressed, like
mm,
love and safety and oh my human and yeah, and I think if we know that for dogs, we feel safe enough to do that for dogs. Maybe it feels silly to think about that being in the presence of another human, like just still and quiet and
mm,
hand on heart feeling that kind of presence. But man, that's transformative. If we can sit in the space of another human being without kind of trying to avoid that discomfort,
mm.
deep, deep, deep connections. That's what that's what like compassion means to me is that I'm able to be with you in your suffering, in your pain, in your expression.
Mm,
And that's a real heart-centered characteristic is compassion.
mm. Um, there were many moments of that. Or, I'm happy to say, like, so we're now deeming this a very serious retreat that we went on.
Yes, clearly I've seen very many serious photographs of your very serious retreat.
This is a very serious retreat. It's not a holiday, it's a very serious retreat. That became our like little mantra. Um, but the thing was, it was intertwined with all those moments. But I think where so we could have a lightheartedness to it, shall we say?
Yeah.
It then allowed or created more of that openness and allowing whatever was to come forward and connect and align. We can use all the words here, couldn't we? But um and there was many a times, although it was sing to heal, there were many times where we just sat quietly on our own in reflection and also as a group,
Yeah.
and I would say it's as much in those moments as it was when we were jumping around and singing around the table, or we were doing the sound reiki, or whatever it is that we were doing. They both equally had their impact, and I think that's like a really important thing to
But
recognize and
a
understand.
100%. And when we're talking about matters of the heart and the mind, and the heart is about the fullest expression of all of that which we feel. The
Mm,
freedom and joy is part of that expression, right? Joy is part of it. So there has to be space for joy. And then the
mm,
serious bit really for me is actually just the mind's purpose and focus and intention. And actually I think one of the many of my podcast hosts, real world-class leaders have all said, Dr. Vanessa
mm,
the point I can remember specifically, she gives this analogy. Oh, the cracking open of the heart, the vault.
mm,
This is the most courageous work that any of us will do. Is getting to the matter of the heart, and that's got a beauty beyond our understanding. And it requires all of those expressions,
mm,
seriousness and play. Like it's the yin, the
mm,
yang. It's the
mm,
you can't separate. You have to integrate. This is a
mm.
very serious retreat.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, I don't know how we're doing for time today, but I'm not really paying attention. But it just kind of,
You
I
still in
think,
IB for time?
yeah, I really am. It just kind of leads me back around to this idea that community is not based on geography, because as it stands, the group of ladies that came together on the island are all, relatively local-ish to this kind of quadrant of the UK, but we were separate enough and then came together in this brand new space, not knowing one another really at all. Um, and like you said, we all had the capacity to tune in and crack open the heart space
Mm.
so that we could come together, and it created community. And then everywhere we went throughout the week, we were kind of just, like picking up people along the way and doing all this. And like on our last evening, because I think this is a real beautiful example as well. Like, so we had like our hosts who were doing all our food and everything for us. And then we had Lisa and her family that were other facilitators to like the week. And they like dipped in and out all week and helped us with different things. And on the last night, they were like, oh, we haven't really planned your final meal. How about we fire up the barbecue? And we were all just like, yeah, that's amazing. That sounds brilliant. And then we just kind of all looked at each other and went, you will have to be there as well. And they were like, what? Like, what do you mean we have to be there? It's like, well, you've been here all week. You've been a part of everything that's gone on here. It would seem like a disservice to you and to ourselves and what we want to create that you are not a part of this like meal with us, that we get to kind of like come together and celebrate everything that has been like created. And it felt quite new to them in terms of this like retreat space. People normally don't want them involved in that way, and they kind of said it kind of opened up their eyes as to kind of what they could do and create in the future, and how this coming together in community sort of space could look, which was a really beautiful thing. And so obviously we had people from the UK, we had people from the Netherlands, we had people from Brazil, we had, where else were they coming in from? The US, all over again. So to me, that's a really beautiful example of what we're talking about today.
Yeah. It's that idea that if you go and like seek those things as if it's not present, you miss the opportunities to make those things happen. If you're constantly looking for places, again, there is an element of value in trying to find your right place. But if you think that that's based on this idea that it's outside of you, that you don't already have that, you'll miss the opportunities to plant yourself. You'll miss the opportunities to create that community in that moment. And some of the conversations we've got, aspects of Neil's conversation, his dialogue, is he says that group consciousness is more powerful than individual consciousness. And if you're not in the right groups, go find a better group. And if you can't find a better group, go create one. Because there will be people that absolutely resonate. And I guess we're talking about frequencies for consciousness. And, knowing yourself first and foremost, who you are, what you like, what you've got, what you like to bring, absolutely enables you to plant the anchor when you're like, this is my group, this is my people, this is how we're going to like do these things. Why? Because it's the most, John DeMartini said to me, he said, the true purpose of love is not happiness. We're not trying to create a community of love so that people can be happy. He says the purpose of love is authenticity. We're trying to create a right environment where people feel safe enough to be their fullest expression.
That was one of my biggest takeaways from that week, to be honest, be completely honest with you. It was just that I felt in that space that I got to do exactly that. And it was like, okay, so if I can do that there, then I can do that anywhere. So yeah, that's really, really exciting.
And what a gift, because upon that decision, upon that realization and discovery, now sets on a life of new possibilities.
Yes.
Yeah. You're halfway through this thing called life.
Mm.
Imagine what you can do with the intentionality behind that perspective.
It's already happening, which is really cool.
Yeah, imagine that, right? Imagine that. So we are master. I think I always bet yesterday. I've had enough people say this in our Master Heart and Mind group sessions to say that we have done something special in there. We've created a master facilitation of this space of heart connection and growth environments that really create, context for growth, nurtures growth, and without giving names away, if you don't feel comfortable enough to say who facilitated it, but what would you observe the facilitator what magic did that person bring, and how, if we're ready to dissect some of the world's best at some of these things, like if this is that type of podcast, what would you say were two or three things that they did to really facilitate this experience that you and those ladies have received over the last week?
In Ibiza,
Yeah.
I think what there was from them also was like an openness to everything that was going to come our way that week, for there not to be a control over that in any way, that it was important for all of us to have the experience that was intended for us when we were on that island. So although there was, like we've just been saying, a kind of a figurehead, a leader as such to guide, that was their job. It was to guide.
Yeah.
And then whatever each of us brought, or whatever the island brought, we ran with it, and everyone then benefited. And a big word for me was expansion. So everyone expanded with that. Everyone had their opportunity to go inward, and also just like shine so brightly that we were all very dazzled by one another. So I think it's just like an openness, an honesty, a trust in that whatever was meant to unfold would unfold. And like I said, like holding space for conversation, but also holding space for peace and for quiet time, to allow us to sort of just digest and, I guess, integrate a little bit while we were there, everything that was going on.
Yeah. The same stuff that is expanding the universe is within us.
Yeah.
Forever expanding.
And I just think, I'm not saying everyone has to go off on a very serious retreat in Ibiza in order to obtain this, but I would suggest that everyone gives themselves an opportunity to sit at least with themselves and give themselves time and peace, and however that looks like for
I
you.
have a belief that the universe wants you to come home to love, that the universe wants you to realize this expansion within you. And I believe, or I've seen or I've experienced, is that we can either do that willfully, crack the vault of our heart open and expand,
Yeah,
or
that's it.
life's going to break our hearts so that we may get the light within the cracks and have its way to expand.
Yeah, and I think you can then experience both as well. I think you can be forced into it initially, and then over
I think
time
it's
you
the
go like,
universe lovingly presenting us opportunities to experience that which who we truly are.
yeah, exactly.
By
Yeah,
sending us examples of who we're not and what we don't like.
yeah. Don't want that bit. No.
Yeah.
Put that
Is
back in
this
the
who you are?
box.
No. Is this
No.
what you want? No.
No. Thank you very much. But yeah, so that was an example, I guess, again, of another community bringing together other little communities. I think we were having a conversation with another one of the facilitators there, and a couple of things that she said. So one, it felt like we'd already sat and had that conversation. That group of women had been gathered in that way before, and we'd had that conversation a long time ago. But second of all, was that this time around, it was very different in that we were all ready to step into our roles of being the connectors, being the ones that are going to bring, obviously in our case, in that moment, it was the women, but collectively gathering everybody that is gonna bring the light for the dark, and shine the way, guide the way, use their light in all the healing that needs to go on and happen um, in the world and in the universe. So
Yeah.
it's just, I think we're just,
Try doing all that without a community.
well, this is it, right? This is literally it. That we are constantly, although we might seem like we have pockets of community, we are just this one great big whole community. And the more that people recognize that and see that, obviously, the far better a lot of things in
So
our physical world would be.
let me just read you some of my notes in preparation for my conversation with Rollin. I
Okay.
think I've gone proper kind of like out there. In his latest research, it talks about how spontaneous synchronization of hearts. So it's that this idea that actually, we can sit and we can try and meditate, we can try and raise our consciousness, but what he's talking about is getting to a spontaneous synchronization of people at the level of the heart, right? And I
Mhm.
remember watching Gaia. There was a documentary on Gaia about the post 9/11 event and how these people just mobilized into action. Everyone had a role. It just worked. It operated almost like you just imagine a colony of ants, right, working together
Mm,
as one to just do whatever's needed. No, and it's like the image that's in my mind is one of actually if we do see that they're operating as one organism. So yes, it's connecting at the level of the field of the heart. There's a resonance of the heart. But then my question is that the truth of who we are? Are we one organism? This is getting a bit far. This is that
mm,
whole kind of, are we supposed to be one organism working, together,
mm,
but in seemingly separate bodies
mhm,
under the illusion of separation? Are we in the next phase of our evolution, which is to be connected at the heart, to synchronize, to harmonize, which then creates the next evolution of human, which is
mm,
an organism called humanity?
mm,
Because if that was the one, right, which is why Richard Rudd talks about we're at war with ourselves. We're trying to
mm,
cut bits off of ourselves. If humanity is an organism, we're not in harmony. We can't true. It's like a body that's at odds with itself. It's like if your immune system's trying to kill itself off, like, or it's rejecting certain things. It's never going to optimally operate.
mm,
Can you imagine if, like, instead of like 8 billion individuals, we were just like 8 billion aspects of one whole thing,
mm,
supposed to work in harmony, but because we have this illusion of being separate and different and individual, we also have the loving free will to
yes.
not. I think the
Mm,
loving free will is the freedom to, but I think there's something powerful when we remember that we're supposed to act in the service
mm.
of the whole. Anyway, those are my musings, and hopefully the question will come out clearly
Yeah.
to Roland, because I'd love to know his answer about what he thinks of.
Yeah, that'd be really interesting to hear. But I think you're right in that we've all got our we've all got our roles to play in the bigger collective, basically. Whether people want to or feel they can get on board with that or not. But I think we know that if we are all on this frequency, the only good things can happen, I think
Mm.
uh and I struggle with who wouldn't want to be on board with that. I hope that more people open their hearts and minds to it, however it looks for them. And I think we'll just continue to create and grow this I'm going to call it a collective community. And I quite like that term, the collective community. So wherever we go and whatever we do, we're just constantly bringing up more and more people along for this collective, for making this change, making this difference. Um, yeah, I'm down for that.
I think this
Boom.
has been quite a profound conversation, and I look forward to listening to this one back. And I suggest
Yeah,
you do the same.
yes, I think I will.
Would you like to wrap up?
Yeah, I'll do that. Thanks so much, guys, for tuning in. As I say, this has been episode 17 on the 17th of Community Conversations, and I hope you go away from this realizing that you are community and you can create that wherever you are in the world. So thanks.
Oh, done. not
Yeah,
bound by geography. There we go.
not bound, not
Question
bound.
answered. Exam answer. Exam question answered. Tick.
Done. Tick. Pass.
Brilliant. Thank you for your heart. Thank you for your mind. We look forward to spending time with you next time.
See you soon. Bye bye.